Now, talking about being caught in the act, look, ever the professional, I know how to do a segue at least. Clinton seems to be caught in the act quite a bit when it comes to these Epstein files, especially when it comes to being in hot tubs. You would think that Donald Trump would take the opportunity to really drive the knife in, the metaphorical knife that is, given how much he doesn't seem to enjoy the company of crooked Hillary, Bill Clinton's wife. And yet, quite astonishingly, he's defended Bill Clinton. Why is he doing this? He said, I don't like the pictures of Bill Clinton being shown. I don't like the pictures of other people being shown. I think it's a terrible thing. What's going on? Let's speak to Laurie Laird, who's a US political commentator. Hello there, Laurie.
Hello, Alex. Looking at your phone, you're like my kids at the dinner table.
I couldn't help it. I just, feel like this is the problem, right? Three hours on air, and you get out the other side, and you've got about 80,562 WhatsApps to contend with. And my neighbour's messaging me, says all this drama going on my street. I got the decorator in. She's been checking if he's painting my walls the right colour. There's things I've got to monitor. So there I was.
No time for work.
I mean, I could just leave you to crack on, tell the audience what's going on, and I'll make sure my room's being painted correctly. Donald Trump's approach, it doesn't... From an outsider's perspective, he's sort of, look, I'm minded to agree with Donald Trump about the publication of all of this stuff. It's just besmirching everybody. Epstein was clearly a horrible and wicked man. It's now being used to political point score. No one seems to care about the victims in all of this anymore, which is pretty crass and unbecoming. But the American public have got their knickers in a twist about this. And, from an outsider's perspective, when I look at this, everyone seemed to go to Epstein Island. In fact, if you're not on the list, you don't seem to be a very important person. But I can't see how it works in Trump's favour to come out and say as such. What's he up to?
Well, it is difficult. And when I saw those comments, I thought, what? And, I think that to start with, we probably should stop being surprised when Donald Trump changes his opinion on something. I mean, the man has shown an extraordinary flexibility with some of his opinions. But you have to wonder, and this is speculation, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But when Donald Trump said, look, reputations are being besmirched and, Bill Clinton can, take care of himself, we didn't know when he said that a whole nother batch of files was going to be released today. And one of the things that we have seen today is a letter from the Department of Justice when Trump was president the first time, saying that Trump had been a passenger on Epstein's plane more often than was previously thought. He was listed as a passenger 8 times. This is not any indication of wrongdoing whatsoever. If Epstein and Trump had not met, given their social circles they moved in New York and in South Florida, that would have been more remarkable than the fact that they had an acquaintanceship. But the fact that Trump had ridden on that plane, and this was something that was flagged by his own Department of Justice in 2020, that may be why Donald Trump is backing off the Clintons a little bit. Now, I am putting 2 and 2 together here and may not be accurately getting 4. I think that the point that you have made about reputations being besmirched is a valid one, but I also think, let's take the politics out of there. A lot of very powerful people, mostly men, were aware that something was wrong with Jeffrey Epstein. The plane was called the Lolita Express. A lot of people that had a lot of power looked the other way. And I think this needs to be looked at, not through a political lens, but who knew what in terms of law enforcement when the DOJ first became aware of allegations against Epstein in the mid-1990s. So that means Departments of Justice of both, appointed by both political parties, looked at this case, decided in the mid-90s or late 90s that this was not a federal case. I think it's time to learn the thinking. Why was this not a federal case? When he was convicted in 2008, those were state charges. He got off incredibly lightly. Why were federal charges not pursued? This isn't a political issue. This is a legal issue, and I think at this point, we should probably know more about it.
I mean, do you think, essentially, that it was because so many powerful people had done, as you said, got on that aeroplane, turned a blind eye. I mean, come on, we've seen the photographs of all the decor in that house. It was very clear. You'd have to be blind to not have a sense of what was taking place.
Do you not think, for a guy who had all this money, do you not think his taste in interiors was like a low-budget Airbnb?
Do you know what? I really thought that. There was one room of this pink room. I don't know why it was there involved in the slides, unless it was to show you how rubbish his decorating was.
Honestly,
because it did look really naff.
I'm missing the point. I know, but you look at it and you think, seriously? I've been in Airbnbs that I thought were much nicer done than that. But I think this is who looked the other way and why. I mean, we have Larry Summers, who was a head of Harvard University, served in the Obama administration, really well-respected economist, sending emails to Epstein looking for advice on how to seduce one of his students. Right? I mean, this is sort of, the best and the brightest, in the American political system. So I agree with you. So many people seem to have been linked to Epstein and turned the other way. This is incredibly concerning.
Why was he? How did he do this? How did he have such a hold over people?
Okay, Alex, this is something, again, I'd like to have explained. He got his start as a supply teacher at an incredibly posh secondary school in New York City. And one of the parents came up and said, hey, you'd be good in finance. How he made that leap to becoming incredibly wealthy, owning his own plane and his own island, that's never been entirely clear to me. I'd love to know more about that.
There's plenty of conspiracy theorists surrounding that, particularly that he might have essentially been a foreign agent there to
I know,
blackmail.
I've seen that around. But there's something else that worries me about this. So I mentioned that, it looks like federal investigators of both stripes. And we like to, in America, we like to think of prosecutors and public defenders being apolitical, but they are appointed by political parties. You can't get away from that. But I'd really like to see the thinking in not charging this guy. The other thing that's really worrying me about this, Alex, is this staggered release of the documentation. Now, by law, a law passed by a Republican majority Congress, signed by a Republican president, all of that documentation was meant to be in the public domain by midnight U.S. time on Friday. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, says, well, we couldn't comply with that. You're going to get it when you get it. This is not following the law. That may not be all that relevant, but what's bothering me a lot is the fact that the law is not being followed, and we're now learning that Congress, which passed this law, doesn't really have any recourse to enforce this law that they passed. That's not party political, because at some point the other guys are going to be in charge. And if there's an erosion of legal norms and the Congress cannot hold your Department of Justice to account, it doesn't matter who's in power, that erosion of legal norms is extremely concerning to me.
There's been some pretty troubling releases relating to the royal family. In particular, an email sent by the letter A, at Balmoral, asking Ghislaine Maxwell whether she had any new inappropriate friends. The email was released in the latest tranche of Jeffrey Epstein documents, was sent in August 2001 and signed off as A, kiss, kiss, kiss. It said, I'm up here at Balmoral summer camp for the royal family. They described themselves as totally exhausted, asked Epstein how Maxwell is doing, and then wrote, how's LA? Have you found me some new inappropriate friends? Let me know when you are coming over, as I'm free from the 25th of August until the 2nd of September and want to go somewhere hot and sunny with some fun people before having to put my nose firmly to the grindstone for the fall. Any ideas? Gratefully received. Now, it's not been verified whether the email was sent by Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, but we have to assume it is. That's a pretty big...
Yeah, Alex, somehow, and I'm happy to say I had missed that one, but I wanted to put my head in my hands when you were reading that out. I don't know how much further Andrew Mountbatten Windsor can possibly fall. And as you say, we do not know whether that was from him. It's going to be hard to live down the photograph of him lying with that wolfish grin, with on the laps of a group of what we would assume to be young women. Their faces were all redacted. I don't know how much further he can fall and what should happen with him. It must be absolutely dreadful, for the rest of the royal family to wait for revelations to come out. They must be thinking, what next?
Yeah, I mean, the Telegraph has not verified whether the email was sent by Andrew, but of course I think people are going to put two and two together. And that's incredibly, not just embarrassing, that's, I would say, quite catastrophic. And then I want to get your thoughts on this as well, because Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, has reaffirmed that he believes his brother did not die by suicide, but was murdered in prison, and has hinted that it may have been Donald Trump and his administration behind it.
Wow. This is such a difficult one for Donald Trump, because some of those conspiracy theorists make up a very influential part of the MAGA base. And some of these people, the QAnon theory with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, previously a big Trump supporter, not so much anymore. This feeds into this sort of fringe grouping, yet an influential grouping of conspiracy theorists who have helped propel Donald Trump into the mainstream. They're not necessarily Republicans, but Donald Trump has always had this ability to tap into people's grievances, including grievances of people who are conspiracy theorists. If Donald Trump does not dance to those tunes, it's difficult to see how much longer he can remain as popular as he is. I'm really surprised, Alex, over the past, say, month or so, how Donald Trump seems to have lost touch with that ability to tap into people's grievances, not just with the Epstein issue, but also with things like the cost of living, when he will tell people that the cost of living is a hoax and really things aren't getting more expensive. You just, telling people they can't believe their eyes when they get their shopping bills. This is unusual for Trump. This has been his political gift, to be able to tap into that. And he doesn't seem to be getting it right now. Whether this is a temporary blip or something else is going on is an open question. The guy needs a political break if he's going to retain that sort of, I don't know, leadership that he's been able to. He looks at sea at the moment.
Do you think the worst is yet to come with these Epstein files?
I think probably my sense would be that if there was something incredibly incriminating between Trump and Epstein, that it probably would have surfaced by now.
Yeah,
I mean, Trump's a really high-profile guy. If there was something really bad out there, I suspect we would have seen it. Trump says that they fell out in the early 2000s. There's no evidence to suggest otherwise on that. There's no photographs of the two of them together after that time. But Trump has also been on record in an interview saying, Jeffrey Epstein, like many men, likes women, but Mr. Epstein likes them a little younger. So how much was Donald Trump involved in any skullduggery? There's no evidence to suggest that. But like many people, did he have a sense of what may have been going on? That's an open question.
Yeah, it's certainly keeping us all sort of perversely titillated. Laurie, thank you ever so much for coming on the program.
Good to see you, Alex.
Right.